So Marvel, man. Marvel is just always a disappointment at this point. Like, there's nothing that comes out of Marvel's sector that is ever really truly entertaining anymore, with the exception of maybe No Way Home. I thoroughly enjoyed No Way Home a lot, and obviously a lot of other people did because it made so much money. But Marvel thought that they can rush through Phase 4 and just skip some of the last moments, go straight to Phase 5, and everybody was going to forgive them for what happened in Phase 4. But unfortunately for them, they are now realizing that that's not actually what happened at all. People are not forgiving them. People are continuing to hate on Marvel, and obviously Marvel does have their shills. But now apparently Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania has just been declared a bankrupt enterprise by another huge drop at the box office. Now, obviously this one came from a YouTuber, Valiant Renegade, I believe, and honestly, a lot of people feel this sentiment. So we're going to get into the article and see what it has to say. So it says, following another huge decline in box office grosses for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, analyst Valiant Renegade declared the film a bankrupt enterprise. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania declined 60% in its third weekend from its second weekend. The film only grossed $12.8 million domestically. It has only grossed $188 million total domestically and $232 million internationally, for a global gross of $420 million. Analyzing these numbers, YouTuber Valiant Renegade said even after a full 3 weekends in release, it's unlikely that Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is even going to breach $400 million at this point. He added, "This movie is done, folks. I think $500 million is almost entirely off the table, and this movie may conclude its box office run both here in the US and abroad, maybe somewhere around $450 million, and that is a big loss for the Walt Disney Company." He went on to explain that means that at that point, effectively any and every dollar that they spent on the marketing campaign for this film, above and beyond the $200 million they spent to produce it, has all been burned up in flames. And that figure, as we continue to remind folks for these Marvel movies, a $100 million is very low floor. He continued, "It's at least that much, but more likely it's probably closer to 125, if not even slightly higher. Marvel and Disney spend a lot of money on these things. They need to get the word, because they need not only these films to do well, but they need merchandise sales to pick up." Now, here's one thing I need to say about the whole marketing thing. So you guys got to remember, in my opinion, this is all in my opinion. In my opinion, the marketing is not as high as it probably was prior. And if it is as high, it's probably just because like increased costs, but they're not necessarily doing as much marketing. The reason why I say that is because they've had over 10 years, okay? 10 years in the initial first 3 phases, right? Those 3 phases created Marvel shills. That's what they created. They created Marvel shills that are going to go out and watch a Marvel movie simply because it's a Marvel movie. So with that being said, because they have those Marvel shills, they don't necessarily have to advertise as hard as they used to back when Marvel was first kicking back up with Disney and they were doing the first 3 phases. The success of the initial MCU has garnered them a reputation that allows them to basically slack on marketing slightly, because people are just going to see a Marvel movie just because. That's how most of the normies are going to approach a Marvel movie. Now, when it comes to people like us who look at things a little more critically, obviously they're going to try to not market to us because we're just going to completely destroy the movie in every sense of the word if the movie's bad. And unfortunately for them, Ant-Man Quantumania is pretty mid at this point. I don't know if it's a bad movie. I didn't see the movie, just flat out. I didn't see the movie. I read obviously like the storyline and whatnot, but I didn't see the movie because I don't want to support Disney. I don't want to support anything Marvel related anymore because they're completely trash and what they're doing is just ridiculous. But it's pretty mid. It looks pretty mid. And a lot of people are having issues with that because the story is just completely mid. Now, with that being said, I do see this movie as a bomb. I can see this movie bombing 100%. I just don't think the marketing is as high as people are probably trying to make it out to be, because at the end of the day, they're just guessing the number. They don't really have the actual full-on number. It says later in the video, he asserts, "We're looking at a movie that's going to have at least $100 million loss on the table of discussion here at this point. If this movie does indeed finish up around $450 million, which is very likely to happen right now, we're looking at a pretty significant loss for the Walt Disney Company, at least around $75 million. But it could be higher depending on what exactly they spent at the end of the day to market this film." I'm glad they said that, because that's exactly what I'm saying. It all depends on what they spent to market the film. They're saying it could be higher. I'm saying it's probably lower, in my opinion. Honestly, I really am saying it's probably lower, especially for this particular movie, because a lot of people were already hyped about it who are Marvel shills, because it's starting Phase 5, and they're all telling their friends who are going to tell friends who are going to tell friends, and they're all going to go and see the movie. So it wouldn't surprise me. Now, obviously, the numbers don't lie, okay? This movie's only doing about half of what Black Panther Wakanda Forever did, and that movie sucked for a lot of people. So it goes to show, if that movie underperformed in terms of like the overall idea that they thought that movie was going to do $1 billion, right? That's why I say underperformed. Obviously, it made money, but in the grand scheme of things, it underperformed heavily compared to the first one. And that's in today's current inflated market, so you also got to keep that in mind as well compared to the original Black Panther. It says, we know there was a lot of reshoots involved, which I think, honestly, I really think that killed the film. This was a film that was supposed to be originally come in around $160 million production budget, and that ballooned to $200 million after a bunch of reshoots were done, he said. I think those reshoots really killed the film because I remember reading an article literally stating that the reshoots were done because the film was too serious, the film was too dark, and they wanted to Marvelize it. They had to put their Marvel spin on it. They had to put their Marvel jokes in there, and that's, in my opinion, what killed this movie because I think it probably would have did better if it was a little darker. If Marvel just took the time to try to step out of their comfort zone and say, okay, we're going to go with a little bit of a darker film. But they didn't do that. Box office analyst, YouTuber OMB Reviews also shared his grim thoughts on Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania's box office grosses after the film's third weekend. This film saw a 70% drop to week 2, 2 to 3, 61%. This film is dropping like a light, so there's actually a decent chance for this film to, again, barely cross $475 million, let alone get to $500 million, he asserted. I still think it's possible because it's a Disney film and it is a Marvel film, and the Marvel fans are still cult-like enough to be able to show up for the movies like this and to at least get to that. So, again, I've said, they're saying everything that I've said so far in the article before even reading it. Marvel has shills. There's no reason for them to market the way they used to because they're going to have plenty of shills that are going to give them the money that they need on average. What they're trying to do is reduce their costs. That's why they are cost-cutting like crazy. Their CGI department is cost-cut like crazy. I'm almost positive their marketing department was cost-cut slightly. Not like crazy, but slightly. They're cutting costs to try to lower that production value. That way, they know they're not going to make as much money as they used to, but they're going to make just enough to try to break even or make a couple bucks on average. That's what they're trying to do. So I really don't think the marketing number is as high as people are probably thinking. It says, he continued, let's just say, especially if you go by the $600 million break-even point that some people are going by, things do not look very good for this or any other film. And when you take into account that there are so many less tickets being sold for this film versus the previous one, it's just night and day. Now, I don't know where they came out with a $600 million break-even point. If the production budget was $200 million, even if you do an average of, let's say, double that, that's $400 million. I don't know where the $600 million number came from. It seems like they're trying to raise the number as much as possible to make the loss look bigger. But again, I don't want to comment for anybody. It just seems that way. It says, comparing the film to the previous 2 films in the franchise, OMB Review says we are now starting to see not only the numbers going well below that of second Ant-Man and of the first Ant-Man film when compared to its first week in its first run. He goes on to point that Ant-Man and the Wasp had a higher third weekend gross than Quantumania. This film, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, is actually doing a lot worse. And so you do not have to wait very long for eventually Ant-Man and the Wasp to be able to catch up to the numbers of Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. That is, I think, something that should be very concerning for Marvel Studios. So again, I don't really know. Oh, wait, here we go. It says, he explained, because Ant-Man and the Wasp ended at $627 million, Ant-Man ended at $465 million. At $419 million, this film was already pacing far behind that movie, even though it did get a bit of a jump start with its opening weekend haul. Let's just say it's not looking very good for the prospects of Quantumania, and that could be an indication early of what the prospects for the MCU going forward as well, he concluded. To this point, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania has grossed $188 million domestically after 18 days in theaters. Ant-Man and the Wasp has only grossed $168 million through 18 days. However, Quantumania had an opening weekend of $106 million, while Ant-Man and the Wasp only opened with $75 million. Ant-Man and the Wasp has already shaved off $10 million of Quantumania's initial lead. If you factor in inflation, Ant-Man and the Wasp had already surpassed Quantumania at $167 million in 2018, which would be $199 million in today's money. So again, I don't really see what's going to happen with this movie. They could do the Black Panther route, which is basically keep the movie in the theaters for as long as possible until the numbers eventually look good, and then you pull it. I can see them doing that. I can see them just pulling it right away and saying, okay, we're gonna do what we did. It's run its course. There's no way it's gonna do much more. Let's just pull it from movies and start focusing on streaming and DVDs and all this other merchandise. Let's focus on that to try to make up some money or make more money. I can see them doing that as well. Ultimately, whatever they decide to do, I just don't believe that their marketing cost is as high as people think, because because they just don't have to market anymore. And they said it in the article. They ultimately are going to have Marvel shows that are going to give them plenty of money. That's going to allow them to, at worst, break even, and at best, make a few bucks. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.